I design digital products or software. So I'm thinking
Okay.
about how people behave online, how people behave and how they walk through software. And we try to make it as easy for them to accomplish their goal in whatever product or service we're building for them. The idea that designing something means that you're there to make it look pretty.
Mm.
That's sometimes you get to work on products that are really aesthetically pleasing.
Joining me today is Liz Harris, and she is a product designer. So, Liz, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on the podcast. So I'm definitely excited to talk about product design.
Yay. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Liz, can you explain what a product designer does?
Sure. So there's so many different ways that I think people will talk about what product design is, but basically we take business needs and user needs, or people problems and people needs, and we basically align the two. So
Okay.
product designers, some product designers, you'll hear that for a physical product, but I design digital products or software. So I'm thinking
Okay.
about how people behave online, how people behave and how they walk through software. And we try to make it as easy for them to accomplish their goal in whatever product or service we're building for them.
Okay. Amazing. And what made you want to get into this career path, and how did you get your start in it?
Yeah, so I feel like many people, I kind of accidentally got into product design. So I
Okay.
went to art school and I knew I wanted to go to art school, but
Yeah.
I actually went to study painting. So I was very much on a
Oh.
fine arts track. And
Hmm.
then kind of had this epiphany that I really didn't enjoy the painting program and switched over and explored graphic design, then ended up being a graphic design major in art school. And then the types of internships that were available while we were in art school were things from brand identity to
Mm.
UX,
Okay.
to, I don't know, art direction, all different types of things. And I landed in a UX internship in school, which led to a job offer. And then it kind of rolled into what I'm still doing today. And it really felt like a good fit. So I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And now, what parts of your job are the most exciting or the most interesting to you?
Um, that's a good question. I think the most exciting parts are depending on the product I'm working on, what you
Hmm.
can learn about people and what drives people's behaviors. And then when you can kind of come up with different hypotheses on how to successfully push a user into a space that's
Hmm.
going to really help them. And then you see that it does help them. That's kind of the sweet spot where you're
Yeah.
oh, we were able to actually drive for positive change or make people's lives easier. That's the really cool part about what I do. So yeah, I really like that aspect to it.
Yeah. And on the flip side, what parts are harder, emotionally challenging, or maybe just not so fun?
Yeah, I think it depends, we're designing for people and we also are working with people. And I think in many jobs, it's about navigating different focuses. So,
Mhm.
as a product designer, you have to work with many different stakeholders. So, you're working with
Okay.
engineers and product managers and data scientists and content designers,
Hmm.
user researchers, et cetera, depending on what the product is or what company you're at. And
Yeah.
I think that we're all working toward a common goal, but we're thinking about it in very different ways. So
Yeah.
sometimes it can be challenging to get everybody on the same page as to
Mm.
what our approach is to the problem. So it's
Yeah.
about navigating people and making sure that your people skills are up to date and all of that. So I
Yeah.
think that can be really great and rewarding and also really challenging because everybody thinks in such different ways depending on kind of
Yeah.
what part of the technical side they're on or what part of the business side they're on or work with legal. They have different ways that they're coming at things. So yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think that people might underestimate or overestimate about being a product designer?
Underestimate or overestimate about being a product
Yeah.
designer. I think the idea that designing something means that you're there to make it look pretty.
Mm.
Um, that's sometimes you get to work on products that are really aesthetically pleasing, but what I do is really focused on form and function, and really thinking about, okay, what are the business needs for the company. Why are we building this in the first place? What
Yeah.
is our business goal? And then also like advocating for the user needs. So maybe the user doesn't need something that's like, I don't know, the button doesn't need to look so beautiful, or we don't need this gorgeous icon, or it's like you want to have those nice visual design skills. Like that's a part of it, is the visual design skills, but you're also thinking about design thinking principles and how you move people through to like reach their goal. So depending on the company or the company's maturity in design, a lot of companies start out as very engineering led organizations. And then when they start building up their design teams, sometimes there's a lot of education that has to go into working with those teams to help them understand like what we do, and that we're not just there to make the product look pretty, basically. Yeah.
Okay. And we kind of touched on this a little bit, but within product design, what can you specialize in? So you do digital content. There's people that do different types of things, but can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, so I don't do digital content. I design software. So I can try to give like an example to kind of share more about what I do, because I want to make sure there's an understanding. So maybe something that everybody, or not everybody, but a lot of people use Amazon Prime. And this is like one product that a lot of people use. So you know how there is on Amazon Prime a one-click checkout, or a very, very simple checkout process. So I go in, I have maybe saved a bunch of my past shopping experiences, a bunch of my preferences there, and I can easily go, and if I want to refill on something, I can click on that and go and refill that. And then I basically have all my information. There's a very specific checkout process that's very quick. I have like my 2-day shipping, all of that. I can choose all of those things, but they're mostly preset. There's a bunch of product design decisions that go into that entire user flow. So every action that I as a user take is really what product designers are deciding on. They're working with user researchers to understand how people behave when they interact with online or experiences. So that could be a mobile app, like my Facebook app. What's the best way for me to get to my settings and review my privacy settings on a Facebook app? There is an understanding of what user pain points there are, why we need user privacy, which that's a whole nother subject. But anyways, the idea is like, what is the business goal? What's the user pain point? And then how do we make the user's life easier? And in the example with Amazon, they want you to buy something. So how do we make it that much faster for you to buy something? We want to remove the friction there. So product designers will literally work to, it used to be Photoshop, then Sketch, and now Figma is a big tool that we use to really design like it in pixels, like what that interface will look like for users to interact with. Then we work with engineers who will actually build it. So we're negotiating back and forth on what the scope of that project will look like when we're working with engineers. And sometimes like at Meta, I work with content designers. They'll write the content for the user experience. So there's multiple different stakeholders there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And do you focus on one specific aspect, or do you kind of oversee all of it?
So it depends on the company and the product you're working on. So I've worked at companies where I am in like a very specific area. So for example, my first job at a school, I worked for a company that doesn't exist anymore, but they used to work and partner with USPS. So people that got, when you changed your address in the mail, you'd get a bunch of advertisements and coupons to your new address. And I worked on the product that basically helps you change your address with USPS. So how do I fill in all the information? And I worked on a very specific area to like redesign the experience of changing your address online, and then how we get people to verify their new address, all of that. So it's thinking through that experience versus my first team at Meta, or what was Facebook. We were focused on bringing better internet connectivity to emerging market countries. So that was like a big problem. And one of the focuses was around how we could get people onto better experiences on Facebook, specifically when they didn't have good internet access. So how
Okay.
could we get them to access the internet more effectively, to help them have better experiences on Facebook when they were on low bandwidth um, mobile plans, or
Hmm.
they had very slow Wi-Fi, or they wanted to find where their local Wi-Fi was or exists.
Okay.
So that's a very large, ambiguous
Yeah.
problem space, and you can work with your team and own that large scope. So it really
Okay.
depends. There's multiple different problem areas that product designers can go into. And there's
Hmm.
like the just using your design thinking and methodology to know what are the right questions I ask in order to
Yeah.
figure out how to solve the problem.
Yeah. And what are some of the biggest employers of product design?
So I think there's so many different types of
Hmm.
companies that employ product designers. I think like the stereotypical ones are like big tech companies. So big tech
Yeah.
companies want, or they understand that they need really good design in order to drive
Hmm.
really successful products. They want
Yeah.
lots of daily active users on their
Hmm.
products. They want people to be happy and feel delighted by the products that they're using. So, I mean, the first ones I think of are like Meta, Google, Netflix, Airbnb,
Yeah.
those types of companies. But then you have, I live in Boston, and there's a huge like biotech space or health tech
Okay.
space in Boston. So
Hmm.
there's so many different product design roles, and thinking about how do we make the technology for healthcare
Yeah.
better? How do we allow doctors to access patient data in a more understandable way? There's so many different types of problems and spaces
Hmm.
that product design can plug into. So there's so many different types of companies, financial technology,
Yeah.
that ask for or that hire product design.
Okay. And now, obviously, this next question is going to differ depending on the employer, but the average income for a product designer, according to Google, is about $93,000. So, from your experience, is this accurate? What do you think about that number?
I think it really varies. Like I
Yeah.
maybe that's an average. It depends on where you live, what type
Yeah,
of
of course.
industry you're working in product
Yeah.
design, what company you're at, how many years of experience you have, and also how
Hmm.
well you've negotiated
Yeah.
your offer. So I think it can be anywhere from like, I don't know, 70K to like upwards of like $400,000. Like it
Wow.
really
Wow.
is a wide range. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so now, what are some current trends or challenges in this industry, and how do you see it changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
So I think some of the challenges are that generally tech is going through like kind of its evolution right now.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of layoffs in the technology space, not just for product
Hmm.
design, very heavy on engineering, on product management, all these different
Yeah.
areas. There's a lot of people. The market's really saturated with really talented people with experience
Mhm.
that are struggling to get new jobs or keep their job in tech just because of changes with AI,
Mhm.
changes with like our markets, all different factors that
Yeah.
I don't even fully understand. Some of it I have my theories, but I think it's also generally in our job that we're doing, technology moves so quickly that you have to be able to learn new software and new skill
Mhm.
sets very quickly. Like I think I had mentioned before, but even the software that we use to design and hand things off to engineers is constantly changing. So
Yeah.
when I was in art school, we were using all Adobe products for designing user interfaces.
Mhm.
Then the first couple years I was a product designer, we were all in Sketch and we thought it was life changing. And now everything is in Figma, and Figma you have to keep up with and learn all the new features that come out to
Yeah.
really be able to use it in your everyday work. But in a couple years, there will be the next big piece of software. So it's keeping up to date
Yeah.
on your software skills, and then also your understanding of the changes with engineering practices, the changes in user research trends, things
Yeah.
like that.
And how do you stay updated with all of those changes and development?
Ooh, that's a good question. And I'm always trying to figure this out too. But the way that
Yeah.
I've been doing this is um, honestly switching companies every few years. It's great to
Mhm.
understand how different companies and different industries are working by working in
Yeah.
them. I think also reading articles by designers that you really
Hmm.
admire. So I like looking on medium.com and just reading things from people in the industry that
Yeah.
I want to aspire to be like. Just talking to your coworkers, going to networking events, talking about software with people that are in software, I
Yeah.
think is also really helpful. So there's like multiple different ways. Yeah.
Okay. And now going into your daily work and your tasks, what's your schedule like and what tasks do you spend the majority of your day
Hmm. I feel like I've said this depends so much, so many times with a lot of my answers, but
doing?
I mean, today my schedule is very flexible. So it
Okay.
really, in the current company I'm at, I get to operate a little bit in a way almost like my own boss. Not
Okay.
obviously, I'm not my own boss, but I have a product space or an area that I get to own, and I create my schedule and my time in a way that helps me accomplish my goals so that I can support my engineering team, so that
Yeah.
I can collaborate with other stakeholders like my product managers. Sometimes I work between time zones. So right now I mostly work with West Coast people. So there's a little bit of that
Okay.
time zone focus
Yeah.
there. But I get to create my own schedule based off of my meetings. If I need to start work a little later because I have an appointment, then I just end my day a little later. So
Yeah.
I feel very lucky that right now it's flexible versus before COVID. I think there was a
Mhm.
big difference in how many people and many types of jobs worked. And I would go in every single day into an office
Yeah.
from 9 a.m. to at least 5 p.m. And you'd be there and you'd be in person with all your coworkers. And that was a very different way of
Mhm.
scheduling things and working with people. Um, the thing I also like about this is I get to travel a little bit to go and meet with my coworkers, and we'll have a week here
Yeah.
and there of more intense collaboration time, or we'll get to work together. So I still see so much value in being in person with people,
Mhm.
even if it's in more concentrated periods of
Yeah.
time. But so the schedule will change depending on what the needs are for the time. Yeah.
Okay. And are there any busy seasons in this job? And if so, what are they?
Ooh, so I think that the busy seasons depend on like what type of product space you're in. So,
Okay.
for example, like at Meta, there is a very big focus on products that are going to be revealed at Connect, for example.
Mhm.
So, there's teams that will have different crunch times or pushes to
Yeah.
get products out by a deadline so that it can be shared with the public. So, sometimes you'll have things that are revolving around when a conference is. Um,
Okay.
I used to work on a team that was focused in the telecommunications space. So there was a big conference that was focused on telecom,
Okay.
and we would want to make sure that we were focusing and really crunching in those timelines. So it
Yeah.
depends on what focus area you're in. It also goes by the holidays too. So in the US,
Yeah.
we have very specific holidays. So it will have code freezes where there's no engineering code that's allowed to go out at certain periods
Okay.
of time because we know that
Okay.
there will be a lot of people on vacation. So that's when
Yeah.
it will get quieter. So there will be a big push before the code freeze, things like that.
Okay. I see. And now, okay, so you mentioned you went to art school, but
Mhm.
is that a typical path for a product designer, or do you see other degrees or certifications?
Yeah, so I think that the way that people are getting into product design and user experience design, like, really has varying paths. There's like
Okay.
a lot of different UX boot camps that have popped up in the more recent years
Mm.
where people, if they want to become software engineers or they want to become UX designers, maybe they've had other jobs in marketing or customer success, and they have a good understanding about users or people, and they're really understanding of a product space, but they don't yet have like the design thinking skill set. So they'll go into a
Okay.
boot camp and learn those skill sets. I've seen that's the way that some people will get into product design or user experience design. I've also met people who switched from customer success into more of a user research focused UX
Yeah.
area, which is also related. So one other thing to quickly mention is that product design has like many different areas. So
Hmm.
depending on the company you work for, you could be writing all the content as well
Okay.
as designing the interfaces and doing a lot of the research. Versus
Okay.
if you're at Meta has roles for every single one of those people, and we all work
Okay.
together.
I
So
see.
you could have slightly different skill sets and different roles that you really focus in on, depending on really one, what your area of expertise is. Am I focused or I'm a
Yeah.
generalist? Um,
Okay.
so art school is a way to get into specific types of companies, I think.
Okay.
Different companies look for different degrees and different ways that you get in, or at least get that start to it. But I think that
Okay.
once you have experience, it's a little bit more flexible and doesn't matter what degree you
Mm.
have or where you came
Yeah.
from. It really matters what you're able to show as far as
Hmm.
experience, the portfolio you've built, and what you can demonstrate to an employer.
Okay. And what are some of those natural strengths or talents that people should have in order to be a good product designer?
So I think one of the first things is you want to be interested in learning about people and what
Hmm.
drives them, their behavior. Like maybe you want to be a little interested in psychology. It's not psychology. You're not a psychologist. You're not shrinking people in any way, but you want to have some empathy for problems people have, whether
Okay.
it's a problem that is, I don't know, I'm an employee at an enterprise company and it's really tedious for me to type in all the data into a spreadsheet. Like it could be that
Hmm.
small of a
Yeah.
problem in quotes, or it could be we need doctors to have a better way to diagnose cancer. How can we
Yeah.
help them through UX to make their jobs easier so that they can diagnose people properly? So you need empathy for the pain points that any type of user has, um, that in whatever product you're working on. And the other thing is, I think you need to be able to pay attention to little details. You need to be really interested in
Okay.
micro details and then also be able to zoom out and look at the bigger picture,
Yeah.
and focus on strategy as well.
Okay. So we've also talked a little bit about like the softwares that you use, but what are some other tools or technologies that you're using a lot as part of your job right now?
Oh, yeah. So I mean, I'm in Zoom every day. So you and I are over Zoom right now, but I sit and talk with people over Zoom. A lot of the tools are prototyping tools that you can use. I mean, Figma, I keep mentioning because that's my
Mm.
bread and butter and in my day. But there are a bunch of other prototyping products that people like to try out. And these
Okay.
prototyping products help people to really create or make things look real or usable without the code. So you can
Okay.
demonstrate a concept to your team so that then they can say, oh, I understand what we're trying to build. And then they can go and actually build it.
Okay.
So prototyping tools are a thing we use a lot. Um, there's different like user flow mapping tools that we use, like to help
Okay.
us say, I want users to get from step A to step B. So
Hmm.
mapping out in more of a sketching or diagram
Okay.
term, step one, put items in the shopping cart. Step two, choose my shipping.
Hmm.
Step three, checkout, like that kind of
Okay.
example. That's obviously
Yeah.
oversimplified, but how do we map out all the different steps that we think people need? And there are tools for that as well. And then there's things that are more collaboration focused between engineering, design, product
Mm.
management, content design, user research, data science, which helps everybody get on the same page about things.
Okay.
So those are more like organizational tools. And sometimes you can
Yeah.
just do that in Google Suite or Jira, Atlassian. It depends on the company, what types of products they use, but those are more like
Okay.
collaboration focused.
Okay, great. And now, what do you recommend that candidates that are interested in becoming product designers do to set themselves apart from other candidates?
Hmm. I think you want to be really excited about design. You want to have you want to demonstrate that excitement in your portfolio. So you want to
Okay.
have an online presence of a portfolio where I can as a hiring manager, go in, look at your portfolio
Mm-hmm.
online, see that you have a few case studies. I think one of the things that I talk to people about when they're first getting started is even if you don't have any real life experience yet in product design, come up with a problem that you think needs to be solved in the world. Like if you're
Okay.
really excited about language, design like an app that helps people learn a language. I mean, that's a big problem to solve. I know there's tools like Duolingo out there, but create your own and then test a
Mm-hmm.
prototype with friends and then write about it online in a case study. So
Yeah.
come up with your own work just to show your skills and what you have, even
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have like the actual client experience or
So
in-house
good.
experience. Um, and then talk to people who are in the field to
Yeah.
get some advice from them. Look online at other people's work that you aspire to be like. I think those are all great things to get started.
And so now, what are some books or resources that you recommend our listeners look into that if they're interested in product design?
So there's a book by Jake Knapp, which I think it's a little bit older now, but it's called
Okay.
The Design Sprint. And he does this 5-day design sprint methodology. And even just reading through the book and maybe practicing some of the exercises from it,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good resource for learning about the design method. There's multiple different design methods, but
Yeah.
reading about design sprints online is a nice way to say, okay, what would an ideal really exhaustive 5-day condensed version of coming up with a really good idea look like. So Design
Yeah.
Sprint by Jake Knapp is great. I also think that ADP List is a really
Okay.
good place to connect with people who are in product design to um, get mentorship. So you
Okay.
can hop online and get on a session, book a session with a product designer who's working in the field. People
Mm-hmm.
will talk to you for 30 minutes. And I think it's a good way to just ask questions and learn about things. I have been getting mentored by different people on ADP list in my field and
Oh,
will talk to people and give mentorship hours. So I really like that tool. It's a
yeah.
newer tool
That's amazing.
altogether. Um, Another area I think is really helpful is Nielsen Norman, the Nielsen Norman group. They talk a lot about, or they have a lot of really good articles about UX, UI, and user experience principles. So if
Okay.
there's anything you want to understand there, they have a lot of really good articles to take a look at.
So now, if you could talk to your younger self when you were just starting out in this area, what advice would you give them?
Oh, I think it would be that it's all going to work out,
Yeah.
that I don't have to worry so much, that
Mhm.
um, I I can second guess myself a lot and look at other people and think, oh, they're so great. How do I get to that point? But I think just a lot of interest, excitement, hard work, and
Yeah.
just focusing on building the things that are really interesting to you is really helpful. I think the other thing is when I've been in jobs that I wasn't as passionate about or excited about,
Yeah.
finding the things in those jobs that really interested in me or where I could really push to learn something. Those jobs that were less exciting, they got me to the areas later on where I was excited. So even if a job is a product space that you're like, I don't know, I don't love X, Y, or Z,
Yeah.
just doing that, even if it's not ideal, I think it can really often get you into a place that you are happier with. So even if you're not super happy with your current job, you'll move through it and move into the next thing that's a little bit more exciting.
Hey, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And now, finally, where can people reach out to you or where can they follow along with your work?
Yeah, so you can set up time to chat with me if you want an ADP list. You can find me there if you want to do a mentorship session. You can also find my work on www.lizharris.design. So
Okay.
that's my current portfolio. I'm constantly working on it and changing how I talk about my work as I learn from other product
Mm.
designers. So that's another space that you can find me. And then you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, just Liz Harris at currently Liz Harris at Meta on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. All right. Well, Liz, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode and for sharing all of your experience.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. This is really fun
Of
to talk about
course.
this.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!